next piece is presented in the category of prose. It is called A Cheep Shot by Bruce Costin, and Amberosity Davis will be presenting.
Every profession has its pros and its cons. Veterinarians often say the biggest plus isn't the good pay, but the opportunity to work with the animals they love. However, for every animal comes an owner. Veterinarian Bruce Costin believes the worst part of his job is fielding these owners' phone calls, often about nothing, in the darkest hours of the night. He recalls one such unbelievable call in his memoir, A Cheep Shot. Strange things happen under a full moon, as the old wives' tale goes. While strange things may not always reveal themselves under a full moon, strange people certainly do. As the business of the day recedes with the daylight, and the radios, TVs, and children's voices give way to crickets chirping, people have a little time to sit back and contemplate the deeper, weightier issues. These themes seem to require the silence of night, solitude, twinkling stars, perhaps a stiff drink or two, and of course, a full moon to work through. For most of us, these issues center around the great questions. Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? But for the full moon people, the questions, though just as unanswerable, are not as profound. When these questions entangle themselves into strange brains, the full moon people look for answers from known experts. People who don't mind dispensing their limitless knowledge at all hours of the night for absolutely no compensation. That's when these strange people decide to call their veterinarian. My beeper has gone off deep into the night many times to get answers to such pressing queries as, do you think I could reserve a boarding space for my dog for 6 weeks from now? 9:25 p.m. I think my dogs are stuck together. What should I do? 10:15 p.m. Why do you test for female leukemia in my cat? He's a boy. 11:30 p.m. Or my personal favorite, what do you call a baby swan? 3 a.m. I'm sure you can spot the trend here. The later the call, the more important and pressing the question. One such call stands out in my mind. Having just graduated from veterinary school, I experienced a certain degree of anxiety when taking phone calls. Would I know the right answer? Would I be able to communicate it effectively? Would I be credible? Would my insecurity be too obvious? This call was no exception. The caller was a young, apparently sophisticated woman who was clearly shaken. Thank you for taking my call, Dr. Costin. This may sound rather crazy, but I need some direction. What seems to be the problem? Well, tonight I got home from work late and decided to boil an egg for supper. There's an apologetic, self-conscious pause. I waited patiently for what seemed like a long time. The silence persisted. And you need some direction on how to boil your egg? I asked, sarcastically checking my watch. It was 10:30 p.m. Of course not, no. When I put the egg in the water, I heard some cheeping coming from the egg. I pulled back the shades and glanced to the east. Sure enough, the moon was low on the horizon and full. I wasn't sure about it, she continued. So I woke up my husband, and he heard it too. Is that possible? My heart immediately went out to this poor, saintly man. Well, no, I don't think so. Sometimes there is a small pocket of air trapped under the shell on one end of the egg. It's possible that as the egg warms in the water, some of that air is escaping and making a noise. There should be nothing to worry about. No, that's not it. I'm sure. It sounded just like a little chick. Are these eggs that you collected yourself from your own chickens? It seemed to me to be a silly question, since we were in the heart of a city of several 100,000 people. But silly questions were apparently the order of the evening. No, I got them at the grocery store last week. Well, I can assure you those eggs are not fertile. Eggs produced for retail sale are laid by hens that never seen hide nor feather of a rooster. If they've never been of a rooster, how can they lay eggs? I thought about pointing out that she produced eggs regularly, whether or not she was with a rooster, but realized in the nick of time that this would serve only to further confuse the already confused. Instead, I again tried the reasoning approach. That's just the physiology of the chicken. They lay eggs daily, but the eggs only form chicks if they are fertilized by a rooster. Commercial laying hens are never exposed to roosters. Oh, I didn't know that. In addition to that, I continued, all eggs are screened by trained specialists who shine a light through them looking for any signs of fertility. It's called candling. A fertile egg would never make it through the candling process. With no apparent consideration of this information, she merely struck out in another direction. Maybe someone messed up and confused a male for a female and the rooster grew up with the hens. Oh, well, I guess that couldn't happen, could it? The rooster would think the hens were his sisters and wouldn't mate with them, would he? Before I could entirely process this line of reasoning, she took off on yet another tangent. I should have known not to get them. The eggs were so large, I should have realized how close they were to hatching. Keeping the phone to my ear so I wouldn't miss anything, I laid my forehead in my palm and shook my head. No, ma'am, that's not how it works. The eggs stay the same size from the time they're laid until they hatch. Only the embryo grows. But again, I'm quite sure there's no embryo in your egg. Even if there was, it wouldn't be alive. The gestation length of chicken is 3 weeks. From the time eggs are laid in the chicken house until they reach a store is much less time than that. You don't think my chick's alive? How could it be cheeping if it's not alive? I don't think I'm making myself clear. Your egg does not contain a live chick. What was initially amusement was quickly turning into frustration. Look, even if the unthinkable happened and the hen has somehow reproduced the virgin birth, a chick could not survive the refrigeration eggs are exposed to. Successful incubation occurs only in a very narrow temperature range. If it gets too hot or too cold, the embryos do not survive. Now, were the eggs you bought in the refrigerator section of the store? Yes. Do you take them home and immediately put them in your refrigerator? Yes. I found the secret. Leading questions. I was making real progress here. I was darn proud of it. Good. Now, have the eggs ever been out of the refrigerator since you got them home? The pause that followed was longer than it should have been. There! There it is again! Ernest, did you hear that? In the background I heard Ernest, who was apparently laughing too uproariously to have heard it. Be quiet, Ernest, and listen! I was glad Ernest was enjoying this, but my patience was wearing thin. Ma'am? No answer. Ma'am? Hello? There! The shriek virtually pierced my eardrum. Oh, doctor, I can't stand it. Do you think he's suffering? I, of course, couldn't speak for the chick, but I certainly was. Do you think the other eggs in the carton are ready to hatch too? It was no use. Clearly, this woman needed direct visual evidence. Ma'am, why don't you just crack open the egg? Then you'll see there's really no chick inside. Why this brilliant advice had eluded me so far was a mystery to me, but certainly this would bring this phone call to an end. But the egg timer hasn't gone off yet. You're right. But if it's really a chick, which it most certainly is not, and it's cheeping, as you say, which is absolutely impossible, you wouldn't want to keep cooking it, would you? Yeah, I see what you mean. So go ahead and crack it open. You'll see. Everything will be all right. What do I do if it's still alive? By this time, my head was spinning. I was tired and beginning to question my own logic. I was also more than just a little bit frustrated with this lady. So I did have some excuse for confusing my adverbs, you must admit. But honestly, my tongue just played a trick on me. With forced patience, I finally said, okay, if the chick is still alive, they'll have to put out its misery mercilessly. I meant to say mercifully. Really, I did. Immediately, I realized my slip, and bursting into laughter, I put the receiver down before she could say anything more. I must admit, it was a cheap shot.